Hey there, I'm Sheila. I'm from Boxing Rock, and I'm here to tell you about the brewing process. The brewing process is a pretty interesting process, and I'm not in the brewery, but I am going to attempt to brew a beer for you in 3 to 4 minutes so you can get an understanding around what happens when brewing beer, the magic of brewing beer. So, to start, we start with malted barley that's kiln dried and brought into our grist mill or our milling room. This is my beautiful milling room here. That will just slightly crack open the malted barley and really kind of make it into not quite a flour, but a really nice fine ground barley mixture. So that's how we ground barley. Now it's brought over into what's called the mash tun. Along with the malted barley is very hot water from our hot liquor tank. And more malted barley is added into that mash tun. So the mash tun, what happens here is the hot water is mixed with the malted barley. The water takes all the delicious sugars out of the malted barley to make what's called wort. And wort is essentially the liquid or the liquid that makes up beer. So spends a bit of time recirculating. Water is recirculated, it's lathered and transferred over to the kettle. And also, before that happens, it's mashed. The mash leaves the wort, and in that process, as it transfers over to the kettle, which is a magic vessel in the brewing process, what's left is delicious, entirely nutritious spent grain. This spent grain goes to local farmers for their cows and their pigs, and certainly can also be used in nutritious grainy bread, pizza doughs, things like that. So our kettle is where a lot of the magic of brewing happens because everything's added into the kettle. So things like hops, they're added at the beginning, the middle, and the end for things like bittering, flavoring, and aroma. Also, any additions to the beer. So today I'm making a little cranberry, lightly hopped cranberry pale ale. So nice Nova Scotia cranberries are added in at this point, or things like lemon zest, other things like that can be added. And what happens in the kettle is a whirlpooling effect. So from the kettle, the beer, the wort, has to be transferred through something like a heat exchanger. The heat exchanger makes the beer into cooler temperature and takes away a lot of the heat of the beer, so it can be transferred over through the heat exchanger into the fermentation tank. The fermentation tank is where a lot of the magic of the brewing happens. 7 to 10 days for an ale, 14 to 21 for a lager. Yeast is added to the top, to the bottom. Our friends' yeast really do magical things to the sugar and essentially create the alcohol in beer. So it's closed fermentation. Our yeast is getting really excited now, activated to really make a delicious brew. So 7 to 21 days, depending on the beer. From there, beer can be sometimes filtered, sometimes not, depending on the beer. It is transferred over to what's called a bright tank. Now the bright tank, it doesn't last very long in the bright tank, but the bright tank is an essential vessel in the brewing process in that it carbonates. So here, just like a soda stream, CO2 is brought into the beer and carbonated. And a delicious beer is brewed. We'll see what it tastes like. It's transferred over to bottles, kegs, and certainly right to your glass. Oh, delicious. Cheers to the brewing process.